Welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. I'm your host, Timothy Regal. Today, I'm excited to have with me Zac Small. Zac is the founder of the Family Alpha blog and host of the Family Alpha podcast, dedicated to keeping masculinity in families. He's the co-founder and leader of the Fraternity of Excellence, the brotherhood of exceptional men committed to exhibiting masculine excellence, and the author of 31 Days to Masculinity, a program to help men live authentic lives. Zac is an expert on all things family, fatherhood, and masculinity. So, Zac, my dear friend and brother, welcome finally to the Into the Wilderness podcast.
Bro, I am so happy to be here, as you know, because I've been banging on the door forever now. Like, let me in. I can't wait to talk to you.
Yeah, this is awesome. I've been on your podcast, so I'm glad you, returned the favor and we can sit and chat.
No, it's been incredible watching the content you've been pumping out, and I've been catching the episodes, and it's just great to see it continue to grow. Because when you have a personal relationship with somebody and you get so much value from it, you just want to bottle that up and like put it to the world. So when you're like, oh, I'm running the podcast, I'm like, dude, perfect. The world needs to hear what you have to say.
No, I appreciate that. And same with you. And you've been doing this, pumping out content and building communities and things for a long time now. And what kind of led you to get into this manosphere thing? And what led you to start the Family Alpha? Because that's where it all started, right? Was with the blog.
Yeah. So I started writing on Reddit, and then that grew, and I started my own blog, and then that grew, and that led to the community when that grew. And so things have kind of just been growing, when I lean into it. And when there's something I want to do, specifically a discussion around family, around being a strong man, being a strong leader, being authentic, overcoming a dark past, all of these things, they mean a lot to me. And so that's why I'm here. But there was never really a goal to get here. I never said I'm going to be a content creator. I kind of just found my way into this direction. And I just been rolling with it ever since, man. And so, yeah, I started the blog, The Family Alpha. That's focused on masculinity, men, marriage, now sobriety. Fraternity of Excellence, that's the brotherhood, men coming together. And it kind of filled the void the military left behind. Actually, it didn't leave behind. I left the military behind. And so I had that void, and FOE filled that. And so I've just been looking to put the content out there, man, and share my story. And fortunately, and I'm very, blessed to have that play out to where people are connecting with it, and they're finding it worth their time, their money, and just worth their energy and supporting.
And what was it that you think you were looking for after you left the Navy? Like what about that did you find yourself missing once you discharged?
It was interesting because I wasn't looking for anything. I knew that my family came first, and I had to leave the military for that to be possible. When you're in the military, It goes country, then family. Well, that didn't sit well with me because I'm like, I want to be a present dad. I missed my son's first birthday. I missed his first steps. I had shore duties for 3 years. I didn't have to go anywhere. I got to see my daughter grow up. And when it was time to go back to sea, I just said no. I was sailor of the year, I was instructor of the year, I was crushing it. But I was like, look, this contract, it's also my contract. I choose if I want to keep going. And so I left. But when I did, what I lost, and I didn't even know I was going to lose this as bad as I did, but I enjoyed having men around me that were motivators. And the dudes that were around me, they were go-getters. I was with Marines and sailors. And so it was just a cool group to be rolling with. And when I left, they continued on. And I was like, well, what's my mission now? And so I just started talking and trying to help guys and trying to find guys. And so I used Twitter. I wasn't used by it. I was on there looking for dudes, and I came across them. That's how we met. I was like, all right, there's a motivated dude. Like, let's connect with him too. And then now a friendship forged. Now we meet in person. Now we do things together. And so I was able to find that camaraderie and that brotherhood, which I did miss. And I guess if you had to put a label on it, those are the two things. True camaraderie, meaning I will say hurtful things to you because I want you to grow. And you can be honest like that with me too. And the shit talking is almost as positive as anything I could say as a compliment, but also the brotherhood to where when I'm down, there are people who actually care and will go out of their way to pick me up, even if it's an inconvenience to them.
And why do you think that fraternity, that brotherhood, that intimate connection between men is so important? You got some of that in the military, and we certainly have that now in FOE. Why is there such a lack of that in modern society? And what about it is so helpful?
Well, there are standards to it. And that's why in modern society, it is lacking. There aren't many resources. That's why it works with FOE. In the perfect world, FOE wouldn't make any sense because they would say, well, why aren't you doing this in your community? You don't need the internet. And so that would be more of a networking / mastermind as opposed to brotherhood. But because brotherhood, because fraternal, because anything that's all male space has been deemed, non-essential or not inclusive enough. And men don't thrive in very inclusive environments. We thrive where there are challenges. There's a reason that the Navy SEALs draw a certain type of man. They want to do hard things. Here's the thing. You can't lower a standard to hit a quota. You can't make, and I'm sticking with military, but anything. You can't lower what it takes to get in unless you want to dilute the entire population, and whatever you're taking out of that is no longer a thing worth pursuing. And so what we're trying to do is make strong, hard men who are capable, men who they're not driven by their emotions, but they understand how to identify them. They can speak to another man and say, hey, I'm down. But instead of talking about the problem, as most people do, we work together towards a solution. And it's difficult to find a place where somebody's going to say, hey, it's nobody's holding you down. You're 40 pounds overweight. That's your problem. Or, hey, the man's not out to get you. You're spending all your money on booze and cigarettes, and, you're not putting it towards investing and growing, getting out of debt. That's a very difficult conversation to have, but it's necessary. And I think environments like the one we've created and where we're rolling, a lot of the conversations you have, those aren't easy conversations to have with men. But if you can put them into a space where they feel like, all right, I can open up here because you're going to help me, then they're going to be a part. They're going to want to be that. You're going to want to pursue, but you have set a standard. And so people who don't want to do the work, they're not going to want to be a part of your group. And that's why you have to kind of go out of your way to make one. And so I think that's why it works. We have standards. It's hard to get into. We've kicked out quite a few men from FOE. We'll kick out a lot of men, people in the military. You go anywhere that's worth a damn, they remove those who are non-performers. And in society saying that everybody gets a trophy, those are at odds. And so you have to be willing to say, I'm not here for mainstream. I'm not here for the masses. But when you're realizing that the masses aren't good for you, I'll be here for you.
And your kind of personal motto that you've taken on with the Family Alpha and have put into FOE as well is Acta Non Verba, which is Latin for actions, not words. Talk about that a little bit. And I think that is kind of the ethos of what you just said. Like we demand excellence here. We're not going to just come together on our Zoom calls and just bitch about our wives and complain about our bosses and all that sort of stuff. You're going to get honest feedback. You're going to get, okay, well, what are you doing about that? Let's make some change. We'll help you. We'll give you the tough language, but the tough love as well. So talk about that model a little bit and what that kind of ethos means to you.
No, absolutely. And I love the discussion because I like how you framed that. What does it mean to me? I think the way I go about it sets a really good example for others. And that's not coming from a position of authority, but to a degree, that's exactly where I'm coming from. Well, who are you to tell me about parenting or marriage or these things? You're trying to figure it out yourself. Well, yes and no. I've also put in a shit ton of work, and I've really looked at the things that people take for granted. An excellent example and easy to put out there. I would die for my kids. You hear that often. I love my kids more than anything. You hear that often. And then you look at them and you say, yeah, how many books have you read on parenting? 0. Okay, that's fine. How many blogs or how many fatherhood focused accounts do you follow? No, not many. Okay. Why are you overweight? Oh, you don't want to talk about that? Okay. All right. When's the last time you went to the gym? Oh, no, you can't remember. All right. So you would do anything but for your kids, except for invest any time or energy into being a better person for your children. I don't care the words you say. I want to be a good dad. All right. And what I do for that means I take all the extra time to sit down with my children. I read, thanks to Anthony Migliorino, who's recommended a butt ton of books to me. I read a lot of books on parenting. I read a lot of blog posts on parenting. I work with Phil Foster with my fitness to be a good example for my kids to see what healthy looks like. I speak with men like yourself to keep me sharp on, hey man, where are the gaps here? And when it comes to spirituality, I'm working on my relationship with God. How do I improve this? Where do I start? What do I do? I've got to be an example. I love my kids, and I will say, I'd take a bullet for them. I would die for them. That's great. But I'm also looking to live for them. And I want to be a great example for them and not at the expense. I want to do this with them. And so as I grow, I share my story with them. The kids grow. We go back and forth. And when it comes to Acta Non Verba, well, I want a sex-filled and love-filled marriage. Okay. What are you doing to make that happen? I want respect. What are you doing to make it happen? I don't care what these men have to say. And in groups like FOE, just the men that I work with one-on-one, I don't really enjoy discussing theory at all. I do, and maybe it's because I'm not an intellectual. Like I'm an intelligent man, but I wouldn't say I'm going to sit there and read, some very complex readings to talk about the theory of things. That's just not my style. I like to apply it. And so my personality combined with me understanding that the world judges you on what you've done and what you're going to do, not what you think. Because you can have $1 million idea, but if you don't put anything in the market, you have a $0 idea because you're not going to make anything until you've done something with it. And so it's my focus on every man that I work with that you go out and you start working towards the things you say you want. That's how we achieve it. And when you miss it, that's when we have the powwow and like, all right, man, what's not working? Maybe the actions you're taking aren't the most efficient. Let me help you from what I've learned to overcome or XYZ so you don't fall into a hole.
And I think men are kind of screaming out for that sort of accountability. because there isn't that much of that in today's world. You're told, you're perfect just the way you are. And maybe it's not that bad with men as it is with women, but guys are kind of seeking that out because they don't want to hear the bullshit. They want to hear the truth. And there aren't people who are comfortable saying that. And it's not just a simple thing. It's all parts of your life. There's guys who might be making a crap ton of money, but they're failing in fatherhood. Their marital life is falling apart. There might be other guys who are doing great in their marriage, but they're falling apart financially and different things like that. It's a wholeness. And I think that's one thing we try to do in FOE, and that a lot of men are lacking, is that wholeness too. I have where is it here? I got my coin here, my FOE
Yes,
coin,
sir.
mind, body, spirit. And that's, something that we need to, as men, need to have. And all three of those areas, if we're lacking in any of those areas, we're not living up to our full potential. So what do men need to do in order to kind of bring all that together and make sure that they excel in all those areas and aren't falling apart? Because too many men, they hear all this stuff, they'll read Jordan Peterson or David Goggins or all these other guys that are going, they're like, oh, I need to do this. And then they fall flat because they tried to do too much at once. So how do they balance that of needing to be a whole man, but not biting off more they can chew and falling flat in their faces and giving up at the first hardship?
Well, it's a combination of things. One, I think we need more ceremony. I think we need more ceremonious and romantic with certain things as men. And the other part is we need to be more intentional. For a lot of men, they want to do things that will make them a good man. But who set the metrics as to what a good man is? Like when you really look at it, all right, if David Goggins is what you're going for, so running hard and beating the shit out of yourself because of all the pain from your trauma in your past, that's where you want to go. That doesn't make any sense. I understand grit, I understand discipline, but if you're trying to be him, you're missing the entire point. The same thing with Peterson. If you're going to go up there and you're going to theorize and be the smartest dude in the room, and you're going to be able to say words really quickly in a way that gets people to understand the social or sexual hierarchy or whatever you're discussing there, that's fantastic. But how is that helping you with the issue that you're having with your spouse or your children or your real world scenario? You see, they're trying to do things compared to certain people's metrics. How the hell can you please Goggins and Peterson? There is a way to do it, but it has literally nothing to do with their way. And so when it comes to ceremony and intentionality, when I got sober, I said, I'm going to have my last sip at 11:59 heading into July 7th. And because I was like, at that minute, I'm going to start on that. I was intentional to the minute when I was going to start my sobriety. With FOE, do you know the shortened form of FOE? When you break it down, it's FE. What is that? The chemical symbol of iron. Iron sharpening iron. Everything I do, everything I'm a part of, it's intentional. From what's behind me right now being shown to what I'm sitting, what I'm wearing right now. It's all intentional. There's a point to this. And that probably, for a lot of the steps you take as well, it's the same. There's a reason you have things laid out the way you have them laid out. There's a reason you do the things, the reason you ask the question in certain order. You live an intentional life. A lot of men do not. And so they have no idea why they're doing what they're doing. And therefore, it's no longer sustainable. They forget, oh yeah, I wasn't hitting my kid because X, Y, and Z. I wasn't hitting my kid because somebody online said it. Those are two different things. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. And so if you want to be a better man, if you want to start finding your way as to like, well, how do I get this process started? What is it that you want? Not what is it that the TV told you to want or that somebody else said would make you a good man? What kind of life do you want? And then from there, when I boil it down to that, what are the actions required to get there? And now let's put some romanticism to it. You're going to become your best self. You're going to become that greatest man. You're going to do that by not trying to act like a man, but by becoming one. The things that you do are extensions of who you are. You can't just say, I'm a tough guy. I'm going to go drink my whiskey and shoot guns and grow a beard. Most of the dudes who say that are so fragile. You say anything that pushes them off their little pedestal and they're emotionally triggered. They're stamping their feet. They're having an adult temper tantrum. And you're like, dude, I thought you were a tough guy. Like how many badass alpha bros completely fall apart or get exposed as being just giant pussies when you see them in the real world. But online, they can slam those keyboards in the right way. They can show you the AR with their beard and smoking a cigar or whatever. And like, I enjoy a nice cigar. I enjoy shooting. But these are all extensions of who I am as a man. None of them are a show for what I am as a man. And so when it comes to masculinity and living intentional, I do things the way I want to do them. And dude, if I wanted to sit here and drink a Mike's Hard Lemonade, or if I wanted to sit here and, I'm trying to think of like the most against mainstream narrative that a man could do. But if I decided to do that thing, dude, I would own it and just roll with it and do my thing. And you could not shake me. And while the people online who have an issue and would like bang their drum saying, well, that's not masculine, the most masculine thing you do or can do is whatever the fuck it is you want to do to get to the life you want to live. That's the bottom line. I want a life with a family. So I want marriage. I wanted children. Again, marriage. And so I went down this path, and this is what I chose to do. So I'm telling people, have kids early, make those babies, enjoy them as long as you can. I do have a beard, but it's only because I had to be clean shaven for 8 years. And so when I left the military, I was like, I'm done. I'm lazy, man. Like shaving takes more work than growing a beard. I can just let this thing grow. I don't do anything. I'm fine. You know, it's kind of like being sober now. It takes more work for me to go and get a drink than to just not. And so I've kind of like aligned my life to where it's simple, it's easy, and I do things my way. And every step along the way, someone gave me shit. You're being blue pill. You're being conditioned. You're doing these things. Oh, that's weak. And yet I kept on going. And all of those men, almost every single one, has circled around and come back to me and either apologized or followed my program and got on board doing what it was I was doing. Because I wasn't doing this for likes or shares or growth or anything. I was doing this because it was me. And they realized if you're trying to chase internet approval, that's a never-ending journey. And if you're dedicating yourself to the internet, you've lost connection to the real world. My focus is the real world, to live the life I want to live. And I'm romantic as fuck about it, man. I enjoy what I do and I put everything I can into it.
I think a lot of that has become, the image of masculinity has become a caricature. You know, it's beards and bacon and beer and all this sort of stuff. And even the red pill side of things, especially on Twitter, has gone too far. Like a lot of these relationship stuff where, you know, it talks about, oh, your woman must submit to everything and do all that. And yes, I believe in, I had a great conversation on one of my episodes with Michael Foster about dominion and how men are designed by God to be leaders. But that doesn't mean your wife's just there just for your every whim and desire, which is what a lot of it has become. And same thing with if you're not, drinking a gallon of black coffee and eating 12 eggs and doing all this by 7, a.m., you're not a man and all that sort of stuff. And I think it's just gone too far and became a caricature. And that doesn't work. What needs to work is what you just said of what is a man. Yes, there are certain standards of masculinity, but it's what applies to your life and what are you trying to accomplish in your life, in your marriage, in your family, in your church, in your community. That's what defines good man. You talk about many men not living intentionally, have no idea why they're doing that. Do you think that's because they don't have a mission? They don't have a purpose in their life?
I would say it goes back to the earlier question about why FOE is even needed. I don't think we have many examples for young boys. It's one of the reasons I do a lot of youth sports. Kind of that's my angle of like connecting to the youth. But sure. I mean, I volunteer. I've spoke at schools before. I try to put myself in front of these eyes to show these kids that there's more to life than hating your job, drinking beer, and watching Netflix. I like try to show them like I'm 35 years old, man, and I was still chasing around and doing push-ups and working out with the middle school team. And they're like, "You're 30?" I was like, "I'm actually 35." And yeah, man, like life doesn't slow down when you hit your 20s. Life doesn't slow down when you get married. It doesn't slow down when you have kids. You keep on going. I think the more examples we have, the more the youth will see like, oh, I can keep going and becoming an adult doesn't suck. It can be a fun time.
You wrote the book back under your old pen name, Hunter Drew, 31 Days of Masculinity, a program to help men live authentic lives. 31 DTM is a great program. I do at least one a year, and it really sparked me way back in 2017, 2018, when you first wrote it and I first got it and overcoming my addiction. So explain what 31 DTM is and what the program and the book is about and how it can help men to live authentic lives.
Yeah. So 31 Days to Masculinity was sort of my gift back to the community that helped me. And so I turned 30 in February of 2017. And I decided I'm going to dedicate the next month to just helping men. I'm going to run a contest. And so March had 31 days. And that's where it started. Men of March, 31 Days to Masculinity. All of that is because March had 31 days. That's why the number sticks. What I did is I realized I was getting the same questions. How do you do this? How do you fix that? And I was noticing the same trends. And so I took all of those things I was seeing. I was like, we're going to go one day at a time and we're going to break down each one of these things 31 days in a row. It's a long commitment. I threw in some push-ups. I threw in some rules. I threw in some things to challenge men. And it wasn't like, oh, push-ups will get you jacked. It's you're going to do something that's difficult, something you might not want to do, but it's not overly taxing on you. I was like, you're going to face some certain things like no porn, no jerking. You're going to control your sexuality. You're going to get to terms with it instead of always relieving and trying to alleviate yourself of that pressure. You're going to learn how to handle it. And it's the same thing. If you had a vice, you had to give it up. So it's not, you can't have booze, you can't smoke weed, or whatever it is you do. It's if that's a problem, you can't do it. And you know if it's a problem. So it's about integrity and being honest. And so, but also one of the things I wanted to stress there is when you stop drinking, or some guys it was cigarettes, that urge would come in and you had to find a way to deal with it for 31 days. A lot of dudes couldn't do it, man. Porn gets guys really bad. Addiction, those are worse than the push-ups. The push-ups get a lot of guys, but the porn, the booze, that gets them almost every single time because they don't have any development of the muscle needed to pretty much overcome that crutch. So for some sexuality, for others, how am I going to get through my day if I can't drink? I'm so stressed out when I don't smoke. It's like, we got to figure something out here, man. But for those 31 days, you break down your style, your relationship with God, how you're doing with death, what you're running from, your past, overcoming past pain, getting rid of shit that's building up in your literal physical world, working on your relationship, working on the titles you have with people. I can go on for another 27 examples, but you get the point.
Right.
And so I ran that. It was successful. The men came back and said, "You're going to run it again." I said, "I had no intention of doing that, but let's go. If there's enough demand, I'll make a book." Wrote the book. It's on his third version. That's out there. And now once a year, I run the campaign in March. I used to do multiple, man, but as you know, it's very time consuming. It takes a lot of energy. Right. There's just a lot going on. So every March I run a community, but you can basically get the book and just run it whenever. Right. Just make sure you start on Wednesday.
And it's a shit ton of push-ups.
Yeah, it's 4,500 if you do the minimum in 31 days.
Yeah, it is. But it's almost more challenging on your mind, like you say, than it is on your pecs. It's harder to push yourself and to get those push-ups in mentally than it is physically. And I think that's some of the point of it, is to learn that your brain is a muscle and you need to use it, and you're stronger than you think you are, and learn not to rely on all these things. And I'm glad you kind of brought up the addiction sort of stuff too. I mean, that's kind of my forte with porn and sex addiction. Most of my people know my addiction battles, and I'm outward about that and talking about that. And you've kind of, since you stopped drinking, have been very outspoken about that. So talk about your battle a little bit and your decision to go sober.
Yeah, man. I was really hoping this would get brought up. I enjoy talking about this because A, I know it's difficult for many to bring into light. They feel ashamed, but B, I'm just proud of me, man. I'm really good job, Zach. It's one of the few areas I do give myself that pat in the back, because from 13 to 33, man, I was binge drinking bad. As a teen, you think it's cool. I remember getting suspended from middle school for drinking. My son's 12. I can't even imagine him having to go through that right now. So from that point on, I was in a family where you drank when you were happy, you drank when you were sad, you drank for birthdays, holidays. We drank and we were drinkers, and it's just what we did. And that's just how it was, man. And so that's how I associated it. You fast forward a little bit, it started to really take a toll on me. I joined the military. I was in the Navy, dude. That didn't help. That environment is exactly what you see on TV. It is wild. But again, I never got in trouble. I would drink. I would go crazy. We'd have these wild parties. I would also be one of the ones first up, clean shaven, uniform squared away at muster at 5 a.m. after partying until I was blacked out at 3 a.m. Where was that hour? That was like a micro sleep. I'd wake up, I'd drive, probably still having the effects in me, stand there, still probably swaying a little, but I was always there and I was never in trouble. And I say that to say this: never, not once did I have legal trouble from 13. Like I said, I got suspended. So that's the most trouble I had until 33 years old when I gave it up. What had happened though is there were many false starts. I became a content creator in 2015. From 2015 until 2020, when I got sober, I probably made about 8, I'm getting sober for the entire year, posts or blog posts or YouTube videos. And I put that out there and I meant it, dude. And then I couldn't do it. I could not stick with it. It was not working for me. But this time it did. And this time the difference is, and what made it click, I'm 600 and I think 90 days sober right now. So almost 2 years. So this July 7th will be 2 years. And what made this click, going stone cold turkey, immediate dropping, is I looked at the glass of wine while I was drinking it. And I realized for the first time in my life, dude, it brought nothing positive to my life. All of those lies, all of that happiness, all of just getting away from where I was, the demons that were chasing me, I finally said enough, man. And I can see, literally, it's like I'm looking at a glass in my hand. I can see myself in that moment. I can see the glass in my head. I can see Jackie sitting the other side of the couch. And I was like, holy fuck, it's never delivered. I have busted my ass so hard to get all the things that I have. the followers, the money, the house, the kids, myself, my integrity, like my brands, the business, my everything, dude. I have worked my ass off to get here. And I'm like, and this thing has not once helped me along the way. And the whole time I kept telling myself, if I give up booze, I'm no longer going to be a good writer. If I give up booze, I'm no longer that cool vet who can drink with the boys and be a man. If I give up booze, I'm not going to be able to speak as fluidly as I do. If I give up booze, I'm not going to silence the voice in my head that's sometimes like deafening. It's like fucking thunderstorms in my head, man, because the voice is just going and going and going. And if alcohol turned that off, it numbed it. So how am I going to deal with that with the alcohol? But then I realized all that did was pull the batteries out of the smoke detector. It didn't make me a better writer. It made me shitty. I just didn't deal with it till the next day when I had to delete the blog post, to delete all the tweets on this drunk rant I went on. It's not going to make me a better person. I always had to apologize. Hey man, I'm sorry. Things got out of control. I got a little crazy. It was wild. I didn't beat my wife. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't get public intoxication. I had a moment where I realized I have built a life up to where I now have too much to lose. And I couldn't always say that. And so July 7th, 2020, literally midnight, I stopped. And I would love to say like, oh, it was like some grand fucking thing. You know what it was? There was 3 bottles in the fridge and it was like 11:30 at night. And I said, Jackie, I'm giving up booze. We need to finish these by midnight. And so we went and we pounded the other 3 bottles. And we're like, we had a great night. Crazy. Yeah. I woke up hungover the next day and I was like, all right, never again. And dude, I've not had a craving. The withdrawals, if I had to say I had them, there were like 3 days I couldn't sleep. I had insomnia the first 3 days. But after that, dude, it's no issues. And I could not be happier to say that. And now I'm trying to be not the evangelist, banging the Bible and everything, saying no booze. But I am trying to let people know, like, I was stuck in a cycle that was vicious. And honestly, it's liquid poison, man. Like, I don't even understand why I didn't see it before.
You got to that point where enough was enough. I think everybody has to get to that point. And if you're not at that point, it's why a lot of people relapse. I see that with the guys I work with in porn and sex addiction. They know they want to quit, but they aren't at that point. I don't know that it's a rock bottom necessarily, but there's a point where something clicks in your mind and you're like, I can't do this anymore. Do you think that
they say rock bottom, but I was nothing had happened. I was just sitting there hanging out, And so I think that's right, is when you hit that moment, you don't need to be in a jail cell to figure it out.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask you is, do you think you would have come to that point sooner had you had some consequences?
I would like to say so, but there's also the part of me that says I don't like being told what to do. So I feel like if I had gotten a DUI, the expectation then would have been like, oh, now you have to get sober. But if I was sober for the DUI and not sober for myself, I think it would have been a different story. And I don't know if it would have been sustainable. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, it's on your terms. And you had to make the decision, not have the decision forced upon you, not given that ultimatum, drink or quit drinking or else.
Yeah. I mean, how could I have the same feeling towards it if I was forced to make the decision? Right. Like you will sign this or not sign this. Like, well, fuck, now I have to sign this paper to get by with whatever. But did I really make that choice, or was I under threat?
And I felt the same way with my addiction, because the same way I didn't have a rock bottom. I didn't have all these, my wife didn't leave me. I didn't have, all these things where I never got arrested for anything or I didn't really do anything illegal, but, I was never had these major consequences of it. And that's probably why I knew it was wrong. I knew I should quit, but until it was finally me saying, that's it. That's what really made the difference. That and all the other things that I've talked about and going into it and realizing it's an emotional thing, not a sexual thing, and all those sort of things that I talk about in my other avenues. But it was me doing it and doing it my way. I didn't follow some pre-described 10 steps to this or 30 steps to this or 30 days to whatever in my recovery from addiction. I did it my way and I stumbled. Yeah, it sucked, but it was my determination and my perseverance that put through it. It wasn't forced upon me. Going back to talking about your addiction, one of the coolest things about that is that your wife did it along with you unprompted.
Dude, that is one of the coolest elements. I didn't ask her. She just said, if you quit, I quit. So we quit on July 7th.
And that's so cool. And I think that shows, where you're at in your leadership of your family, that she didn't even necessarily struggle with it, but wanted to do that to support you and to be there for you, follow you on your mission. One of the things I've heard said a lot, and I think it's great, is like your family should follow you on the mission. Your family shouldn't be the mission.
Your family, they're a part of it, not the point of it. And, you brought up something interesting when you said, you gave it up without anything forcing you to. I would say that people are much more supportive when that's the route you take. Like if I crashed my freaking car and killed a family and got sober, cool, Zach, stay in jail and rot. But if I'm like, hey guys, I'm quitting this because I have a struggle with it, people are like, oh, you identified you have an issue. You saw the writing on the wall. You made a choice and got ahead of it. Good job, man. Like people root for that. The same thing. If I had, DUI is probably the closest it would come to like me getting in trouble. And so if I were to go drive, drinking, get pulled over, $200 community service, and you have to go to like an AA, whatever. And Jackie was like, oh, I'll quit with you. I would feel like ashamed. But when I was sitting there, I was like, hey, I'm quitting. I didn't even tell her like, you need to quit or we need to, like, I was like, I'm done. I'm out. You can keep going, like, whatever. And she's like, no, like, if you're done, I'm done. I was so like happy. I was like, that's really cool that you would do that. And there's that shame, like I was saying, it wasn't there. So I gave myself the gift of being able to accept a partner on this trip, as opposed to one being forced on it because they feel pity for me because I'm in a rowboat of shit and self-loathing because I got caught doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk a little bit about marriage too, now that we're kind of on that. The unique thing about us is we got married on the exact same day.
Strong day.
It'll be 14 years in August. Marriage is hard today. I mean, it's always been hard, but it's especially hard today. And I faced struggles in my marriage, obviously with my addiction. You faced them as well with being deployed and medical scares, and you moved a couple times and all that. How do you keep marriage steady, keep marriage alive and active through all the shit that life throws at you?
I would say that you don't expect it to be steady. That like a moving thing is your steady. And so the way I kind of been explaining it recently is like a lava lamp. It's contained. When you look at a lava lamp, it's in a container, but what's happening in that container is always moving around. And like, dude, I was at baseball from 8 a.m. until like 4 yesterday. That was a hell of a day. And then today I had kids running around the house. How are you supposed to maintain attraction when you're never home or when you've got like 5 kids that aren't yours running around your house all the time? Dude, you grab your girl and you have fun with it. You make the chaos a part of just the attraction and the joy. And one of the things that is like, Jackie's a priority to me, but I make myself a priority as well. And so I'm not one of those guys who's very supplicating and let me do everything for the family. Let me do everything for my wife. I do things for me, but in doing so, that's an investment in my family. And so, like I was saying about coaching my kids, being there for their events, there's a lot of times like us sitting down right now. I scheduled like right now, my kids, I think my daughter's asleep because she stayed up late last night and my son's like chilling watching TV. And so like, hey, I can get a call in now tonight. That's fine. I structure things around the cornerstone. That's my family. But when it comes to marriage, man, you're right. The things that men have to deal with now are different than when we had to deal with. Like Facebook was a thing, but it wasn't as big as it is. Everything was just less public. People weren't really hooked on things like tech the way they are now. I went to a middle school dance, dude, and they were all like, they had some jam going, whatever. Everybody's phone was out. They were live streaming and recording everything. And I was like, dude, at my middle school dances, I pray to God none of that ever saw the light of day. Like high school dances, like anything I did, I'm like, I'm so glad that was not recorded because I was a kid being an idiot or just being crazy or doing whatever. That's not for the world to see. Nowadays, let's say 10 years from now, dudes are going to be able to look at their wives and trace all the way back to when they were born. What kind of person were you? Let me check your entire social media. Let me check. Did you have an OnlyFans? These are questions we didn't have to have. Oh, did you have Tinder? Like Tinder wasn't a thing when we were getting married, man. Like, so there's a lot of questions men are asking nowadays that we didn't have to face. And better or worse, there's ways to work around it for sure. But as far as, the enjoyment and keeping it steady, dude, you just have fun. You take it a day at a time. And it's kind of like sobriety. Every day that I wake up, I pretend I'm on my second date with Jackie and I've got to get a third date. I try to act attractive. I try to be confident. I try to do these things that I know like are good for her and I to come together. I make those little moments happen because it's important that I treat her not just as my wife, but as a woman. Just like my kids, they're not there to serve me. Like I'm their father. I'm there to be their example. So I let them come and hang out with me. We do things together. I make my family a priority, and that's why it works.
You hear the term, keep dating your wife all the time. And that's good advice. But I think it's more than just going out for dinner, once a week or once every 2 weeks or something like that. It's those little dating things. Right. It's still trying to lead her and to cherish her. And like you mentioned, acting like you're on a second date and you need a third date. You get too comfortable, I think, sometimes in marriage, where your wife ends up like one of the boys that you belch around and you fart around and you do this stuff.
Exactly, man. That's exactly it.
You get to that level of comfortability, that level of intimacy, but have some more. Marriage is more important than that. She isn't your bro. That's why I don't like the term, my wife is my best friend. That's like a pet peeve of mine.
Yep.
Because to me, that is downgrading her. I would consider you one of my best friends. That relationship is different than my relationship with my wife.
And it should be.
She's more than that. Yes, we're great friends. We're wonderful friends. We have common interests. Things we love enjoying doing together. But she's my lover. She's the mother of my children. And she's my partner in this. And I think that's gotten downgraded over time to where it's just, oh, she's my best friend. And well, I think that's, like I said, almost a demotion.
Dude, you are hitting the nail on the head here. The title should mean something. The title wife should elevate above other women. It should elevate above other men. It's wife. She is your wife. That should mean something to you. Here's a great example. I was coaching, whatever. When I'm out in public, I kind of have a more serious demeanor. I'm doing my thing. Like, I'm not here to be your buddy, joke around. I'll talk to the kids, I'll joke with them. But when it comes to parents, I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, whatever. Like, cut and dry. Let's get to the point. You're the parent of the kids I coach. What do you need from me? All right, see you later. We're not buddies. We're not chums. Like, I'm good. But I will go out of my way if something happens or whatever. Or like my son hit a home run the other day. And so I run around, dude, and I grab her, like kiss her on the forehead, whatever. I don't even think about how that comes across to people until I hear somebody say something. Oh, you guys are so cute. Oh, you're so that. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, that's my woman. I wanted to kiss. I wanted to hold her. She looks beautiful. Like, I don't think of like, I don't even know how to word it. I just kind of do my thing, man. And when I see her and she's looking attractive, dude, I walk out of my dugout, around behind the fence, go give her a big kiss, smack her in the butt, whatever, walk right back. Like, let the parents watch. This is me with my lover. Like you said, this is me with my woman. I want to touch her. I want to be around her. I enjoy her company. But also when I go back, it's back to work. And she's like, oh, hey, take a photo. No, go sit down. We're doing something. And they're like, oh, not so chummy now. That's the thing, man. She's my wife. There's a time to be lovers. There's a time to be at work. We need to know and be a little more intentional with who we are and around where we're at. Nobody should be treating their wife like you said, their buddy. Like, they act like Peter Griffin or something. I can think of the dudes. I haven't watched Family Guy in so long, I forgot his name. I was like, the guy, the fat one, Well, don't act like Peter Griffin.
Yeah, most guys, they want a bro that they can fuck.
But then they don't understand why they don't want to fuck.
Right. They just want, you want to be bros and we can do it later. That'd be great. That's not what marriage is, and it's so much more than that.
Women don't want to sleep with a man who treats them like a man. And a man should not be trying to have sex with a man. And so don't treat her like a dude, treat her like a woman. And then guess what? You'll improve your sex life.
Right.
All the things that people see, like, oh, happy wife, happy life, always said by the saddest dudes, never said by a confident man, nor does he have a happy wife. Never said by somebody who's looking there and leading his woman. Never said by somebody who's setting a strong example for his children. A happy man invests in himself. And, if both spouses are working for each other, you'll have a happy house because they're working towards each other. But marriage is two individuals who got to work on each other as a couple while building themselves as individuals. My wife is in cosmetology school at 35. I'm sitting here building all this shit at 35. We are still growing and having the time of our lives with a almost teenager and a 9-year-old who's turning 10. And so it doesn't end, man. There's no end to this. I'll be 45 and game my lady. We'll be having a sex life that blows these international playboys out of the water. Because, dude, it's just, as long as you keep your foot in the gas and keep yourself attractive, life is good. And again, the title wife should mean something to you. It should be intentional with it.
And one of the areas you see a lot of men complaining about their marriages is their sex life. Probably I would guess one of your most read blog posts is creating your slut, which kind of went viral for you a little bit. But you're talking about sexuality and marriage and having a woman who wants you. I mean, so many dudes, they have to beg for sex, or they might get it on their birthday or Valentine's Day, or they have to do this list of chores first before they'll even consider it. You talk about how you could create that sort of relationship where you build that sort of intimacy and that sort of connection to where she wants you and desires you, not because she's just horny or whatever, but because you're being the man you should be, and that's attractive to her, and she wants to be with a man like that. She doesn't want to be with a Peter Griffin or a Homer Simpson. There's a reason why all these romance novels exist with Fabio and all these ripped dudes, because that's the type of man, the leader type of man they want to be with. So talk about creating your slut a little bit and what that's about.
It is the by far most viewed every single month of all time. Everything, every metric that you can measure that by, that is the number one. I think my SEO on that is like perfect. It's like, so creating your slut, great title, but people never get past the title, which is very unfortunate. So it's creating your slut, and everybody thinks it's about making a girl do these sexual things. If you start reading it, I talk about mind, body, spirit, and standards for men. The entire blog post is dedicated to how you as a man need to perform in all of these areas to get your woman to desire you long term. And so I've been with Jackie since we were 16, and we're still having the time of our lives in every capacity one can imagine. How is that possible? That's what, almost 20 years. When you think about that, that should be in the category of, we're almost at the point of living in separate rooms. We don't sleep together. We're not having these crazy adventures. We're not doing this, because that's what the masses have accepted. But if you do the things that I listed, you're going to thrive. You do the things. And so we'll go through a few, but simple things like taking care of your beard and not having it be nasty like a fucking squirrel's living inside it. I took a shower early, so it's a little scraggly, but getting haircuts regularly, working out, not stinking, taking care of your body hair. Some dudes haven't trimmed, down below in a while. And it's like Jumanji. And they're like, well, my wife doesn't want to give me a blowjob. Well, bro, she can't find it in the woods, man. There's like tigers and snakes. It smells like a fucking swamp. Like you gotta help her help you. Okay.
Right.
I explain having a male network, because these men, they go into their home and I'm the king. Dude, what you're saying is I'm tougher than a woman and children. Why don't you go be a king with men? Measure yourself to those men. You've been in that FWE event. We all come together. That's where you choose your pecking order. Mm-hmm. Who's in shape? Who speaks from their chest? Who has a mission? Who's networking and engaging? Who's hiding in the corner? Who's not speaking up? You start to see, where do you measure up to other men? For some, they're like, oh, I thought I was doing great, but when I got there, I got really nervous to speak. I was afraid to talk. Other guys, they didn't know how to start conversations or maintain them. And then, some, well, I spoke too much. I didn't listen as much. And they start to learn like, oh, I'm going to build myself up. Some were like, I wasn't dressed enough. Some were like, I was too fat. Then the next event, every one of those men has improved in that area. And you meet again. And now what did you notice? Oh, well, I'm better at this now. I'm losing the weight. I'm speaking from my chest. I'm doing much. Nice. You measured yourself against a certain standard and you improved yourself to meet it, which is why men need networks. All of this goes into the attraction your wife has for you. All of this goes into maintaining attraction long-term. And so if you want to create your slut and make your wife, your girl who's attracted to you, to do all those fun things with you that you did maybe when you first started, go back to the man you were most likely when you first started. You had hobbies, who had friends, who was confident, who had a mission, who was positive about the world. Not the dude who comes home from work to crack open a beer and complain about politics, watch the news, and then fall asleep. Oh, and if you do have sex, maybe like a 3-pump chump, because you conditioned yourself to finish as early as possible because you're watching porn in the corner and you've only got 30 seconds to do it. And so now your body's like, get in, get out, done. Or you can't get hard because you're used to watching a montage of different clips of different women, and you can't have your woman who you could appreciate had you not diluted your senses with the pixels. Again, that's in creating your slut. Get rid of the porn. And so that was before I even came across you. So now when I come across you, people ask me, I'm like, go see Tim. I literally sent a guy to you the other day. I'm like, go talk to Tim. He will help you. And so a lot of these men, if they were to read that, get past the title, women too, and go through it, they'd realize the emphasis is on your performance. And this goes back to Acta Non Verba. I do want a vibrant sex life. I want to enjoy my wife until I'm 80, 90, whatever it is when I'm going to croak. I want to leave behind a beautiful corpse, and a strong family. And I'm doing that by taking the actions now. And I think if a lot more men took that approach, they would find that a lot of the problems are solvable. They just got to put the work in.
You bring up a interesting visual of being there till you're 80 or 90 and leaving behind a strong family. I see that in what I do in my full-time job as a funeral director. I live outside of Philadelphia, and I'll do a funeral, and the best thing that somebody's family can say about them for an hour at the funeral is how big a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles he was. I'm like, when I go, I hope somebody has more to say about me than that I was a fan of a football team that I never played for, and I've never hardly even met anyone that played for them, and I didn't accomplish any of that. They accomplished that. And all these other things. He was this, he was that. And it's like, I want to be remembered as a leader, as a husband, as a father, leave a legacy. my grandfather that I have tattooed, I think about all the time. Well, what would he do about that? Oh, he taught me this. He explained this to me. That's the legacy that I want to leave behind. And one of your biggest avenues of content is on fatherhood. You lead that Oak and Rock fatherhood along with our brother and friend Anthony Migliorino, talking about that. So, what are most fathers missing today? Why is fatherhood such a absence today? And what can men do? I think a lot of the world's problems can be traced back to poor fathers. So, what can men do to be better fathers, to connect with their kids, to leave that legacy that we just talked about?
You know, that's such a great question. Like, how much time do you have? Let's start there. No, I'm just kidding, man. To hit the main points, if you guys want to go deeper, you know, hit Tim or I up and we'll dive into it. But the surface level, let's just address this for what it is. Most men have not healed from their childhood. Most men became the father that they had and not the one they needed. And that right there is the crux of the issue. They became who their dad was, and that's not who they wanted in their life. They needed more, but they didn't get it. And at some point they forgot what their childhood self needed, and they just become a man and they lose that light. Brother, I never lost that light. I remember me as a kid getting spanked, and in that moment thinking, why is my dad hitting me? He is my dad. And I remember thinking to myself, single digits years old, I will never hit my kids. And as a child, I had this thought. I was like, I'm not doing this. There's something wrong with this. And so I went all the way through, have kids. I do not touch my kids. I do not spank them. There's no violence in the home. And you know, what are dads missing? They're missing the opportunity that's been presented to them. They can change the entire cycle of the legacy of their family up to that point. And if it was amazing, they have the opportunity to improve upon that legacy. I'm doing great. I'm giving literally everything I can to these kids, but they're going to find things I missed. And they're going to build upon that. And so my grandkids are going to be better than my kids. That's fine. But I'm being intentional about it, to go back to that. Acta Non Verba, deeds, not words. I do love my kids, man. And what I'm putting into this is everything I can. And so when I say that, what are parents missing? You know, what can they do? The greatest gift you can give your kids is your presence. You know, I'm always saying presence over presence. Presence with the CE at the end, not the TS. Don't give them stuff. They don't need an iPad that has updates. They need a father who with an upbringing. They need a dad who can be there and show them, here's what we do together. Here's how we operate as the Smalls or the Regals. You know, here's what we do. Here's how we operate. Here's the things that we're going to go out into the world, what we care about, what we think about. And I set them up in a position to where they can live their lives. And I support that. And so they're not, I said I coach baseball. I never played a game of baseball. I played football. Why does my kid play football? Because he didn't want to. And I'm not going to drive him to do the things I loved. You know, I did love football. I enjoyed playing it very much. But I'm not going to be the dad who's like, yeah, he loved football and he loved the Eagles. They're going to be like, yeah, my dad loved me and he supported me. My favorite sports team is the team I'm coaching right now of my son. And wherever he goes next, that's my new favorite team. My other favorite team is my daughter's cheerleading squad. Those are the only teams I give a shit about because my children are there. I'm not living vicariously through other men. I'm living with my kids in this moment because I've got one shot to do that. My lifeline is my one opportunity to pass everything on to them. And the earlier I can instill those values of where I came from, what I've learned, and then evolving that and learning with them and from them as well, the better off this entire family is. And so you're right. Fatherhood has become a huge focus because I agree with you. I can help marriages. I can help men, but family, fathers with their children, that's impacting the future. And so to me, I think I'm in a really good, crossroads at this because I focus on the man and living an authentic life. And I can bring that to fatherhood because the father is the title on the foundation of man. And so is lover. And so when I focus on the man, I know I'm helping the father. But I've also taken a lot of direct fatherhood focused content, especially with Anthony, with Oak and Rock, but to directly let these men know you have children. You brought life into this world. We don't have to do it the way it's always been done. It's time to change fatherhood once and for all. We could be the first generation to use technology to get rid of corporal punishment and violence and see what happens when you stop treating kids like second-class citizens. You're not allowed to hit your wife if she disagrees with you, but you can hit your kids. You're not allowed to, hit your coworker if he makes a mistake, but you're allowed to hit your kids. You're not allowed to beat your dog, but if you smack your kid around, that's quote unquote discipline. That's unacceptable, man. And that's the world we have now. People will love to say, oh, well, why did you comply with the government and all this shit? And you and I, we didn't. Why? Because we're on our own program. We're doing our thing. But where did those adults come from? They came from homes where you do as you're told because they said so. And so why would you not blindly follow the government and do as they say because they said so? And for all those people speaking free and stand up for your liberty and be a revolutionary and, freedom, all these things, rah, America. And they'll turn around and they'll tell the kid to sit down and shut up and color because they don't feel like dealing with them. That's the problem. Where these hypocrites aren't recognizing that they are creating the monster they're trying to kill. They don't want, authoritarian control, but they rule their home like a fucking dictator. It just doesn't make sense. So what I do is I run freedom in my family. I come from a military background. My father was military. My grandfather's military. My uncles were military. My home, you did as you were told immediately. If you were not home for mealtime, you did not get that meal. That's how I operated. And yet my kids will say no to me. My kids will say, why? And that blows people's minds. And they don't say like, no, I'm not doing this. They'll say, no, but what about? And they ask me questions and they present new cases. Oftentimes I let them go and try it their way. And then it fails. And they come back to me and I say, hey, this is why I said this way. They learned a lesson on their own. They figured it out with their little brains. They're capable of so much more. And so I put my kids in a position to grow themselves and be free in this environment. And I'm hoping that leads to adults who are also looking to live free from the system that is totally corrupt.
I'm glad you brought up presence over presence. Not being distracted by your phone or your iPad or whatever. Having that intentional time with your kids one-on-one. There's another quote that you have that I love. You say your job will forget you ever worked there. Your child will never forget you weren't there. And so many men get so tied up with their job, with all these other things. And I think another quote you have is you give everybody else the best and your family the rest. Well, we should be giving our family the best and everything else the rest. And that's something I've even learned here in the last year. And you and I have had long conversations about this, where I was stretching myself way too thin between work and church and all these other commitments that I had, volunteering and doing stuff like that. And I wasn't spending time with my family. And I saw some of the consequences of that. I'm still dealing with some of the consequences of that. And I had to realize, no, I'm putting all those things ahead of my family and ahead of my children. And I needed to let go of some of those. And that took some sacrifice. I lost a lot of monthly income by switching jobs and by letting go of some of these different things. But my kids are more important. And I think so many men get tied up with that and get so focused on all these other, I'm providing, I'm doing all of this. It doesn't matter how much money you bring home if you're never there to lead your kids. What does it take for men to learn that? And how can you get that point across to men that they need to be there and they need to be intentional? There's that word intentional again, and focused on their kids.
When you think of memento mori, it's like, remember you're going to die, or loosely translated to that.
Yeah.
And a lot of men, they take that to mean, and that's actually one of the days in 31 Days to Masculinity.
Yeah.
A lot of men take that to mean, what have I not done that I want to do before I die? I look at that differently. I remember that I'm going to die, and I try to look at, what have I not instilled in others? What have I not said to others? What will I have not done that when I die, they'll have to carry? And so that means I talk to my kids, and I'm going to die, man. It's going to happen. I almost died last year on the way to that freaking trip, dude. Like, yeah. I did get wrecked, but I almost got like completely wrecked. And it was literally the most near-death experience I've ever had. But had I been taken out on that day, I remember I had plenty of time sitting in that cop car while he brought me to the hotel to think about it. And I'm like, yo, I told my kids everything. Like, they knew I loved them. My wife knew I loved her. She knew I would haunt her if she ever met another man, so she better become a nun. I'm just kidding. But all these things, I went through my list of things, and I'm like, I'm actually good. I don't want to die. I want to be here as long as possible. But there was nothing I wish I had said. My dad, him and I we love each other, but we don't really use those words. And I've made it a point frequently over the past few years to be like, hey, just so you know, I love you. I appreciate all the time you put in me. I try to bring honor to our last name. I tell my dad that that's weird for me, at least, because we don't have that kind of relationship. But then he'll respond. He's like, I know that we're not good at this, but I love you too. And, we'll kind of address, like, we don't say the thing, but we're going to say it right now because it needs to be said, and I try to address that with everybody. I don't hold grudges. If like something happens, I directly address, like, hey, here's our issue. Like, you're fucking dead to me. Disappear. You're nothing to me. Just go away. And I'm not mad at you, whatever. We just will never get along. Stay out of my life. There are moments where I've realized I gave a lot of time to things that didn't matter. I didn't say things I should have said. And so I'm living the rest of my life on those terms. If men were to look at their life the same, they'll realize that when they're in death's bed, man, I wish I hadn't worked all those holidays. I wish I hadn't taken all those weekends. I wish I hadn't told my kids 5 more minutes. I've got to finish this report. An hour and a half goes by and the kids are already in bed. You know, how many times will it take before they're out? They're gone. They're off to college. You know, they're living their own life. And now there's no more 5 minutes. You're like, hey, you want to swing by for 5 minutes? Oh yeah, Dad, I'll be over there in a little bit. Oh, sorry, I couldn't make it. I got tied up with these reports. It's the whole Harriet Chapin, you know, the cats in the cradle thing. I want my kids, like when they say your kid will be just like you, I fucking hope so. I'm loving life. If they're like me, man, they're going to be having a blast and looking to be better than myself. And I'm looking to learn from what they come up with and what they go out and do. Like, I can't wait. But at 12 and 9, dude, I'm already seeing the passage of time. I'm already seeing it slip away. These kids are growing and it's a beautiful thing. And that's my job, is to put them in a position where they can go and do their thing armed with all the knowledge they need. But I know that I'm not going to be here forever. And so I'm going to put all these reps in that I can while I can. And if more fathers did that, dude, we would change the entire world overnight. You would see the workforce landscape change like that, because people would be like, no, you know, I'm overtasked, underpaid, like disrespect. Like, no, this is my job. It's a part of me. It helps pay bills, but it's not the purpose of my life. And when I die, you'll have that spot filled within a month. You're not going to leave the gap there, but my kids, that gap will never be filled. So that's where I should really be focusing my efforts, because they're the ones who care about me. They're the ones who love me. And for those who say, oh, it must be easy for you to say, you know, you make money online. You have Wi-Fi. You can just hang out with your family. You're fucking right. I do. I busted my fucking ass to get here. You know, when I left the military, I was offered a job making $70,000. Like, literally, here's the job. You'll start now. Also, just because I had worked, or I had like a trial run, they brought me in after that and said, we're probably going to move you right into like supervising and then management. And so my 70K would have become 6 figures plus really quick. But I would have been working there 60 hours plus, easy. This other job is a government job. Like, hey, we'll hire you. You know, you're in control of your hours. You get time off, all these things. It's only 40 hours a week. We don't really do overtime, but it's 42K a year. I took $42,000 job over a $70,000 to $100,000 job without no questions asked, because the time is the most important thing to me, because in my life, family is the cornerstone. And I try to stress that to everybody. It's like, when they have difficulty making a decision, I say, what's the cornerstone? Like, what's your main thing in your filter? Run it through that and you'll know your answer. For me, it's family. Do you want money or do you want time with your family? Family. I don't care how much money you're offering me. Family. You know, and that's how I operate. Men who lead families should be in a similar position. It doesn't have to be immediately how I'm saying it. Maybe you've got to grind for 6 months overseas, but you come back and now your debt's paid. Now you can buy a house. Sure, in a situation like that, maybe being away is the best thing you could do. But for most men, dude, they just view their job as their purpose in life. And they don't realize that they literally brought life into this world. And that is the point of their life, to create and to foster, now to raise that and to carry that flame on. So to me, I mean, it's an easy decision. And that's what family, especially fathers, need to do.
Zach, we've talked about a ton of topics here. We've talked about, you know, masculinity, marriage, sex, fatherhood, everything. I want to give you the floor here. If there's guys listening to this and this sort of stuff is, you know, resonating with them, they're not the father they want to be. They're not the husband they want to be. Their marriage is crap. They feel like they're a pushover and they're not the man they should be. I want to give you your floor. What's your message to men who are listening to this?
It's Acta Non Verba. Look, you can listen to this entire podcast. You can listen to every one of Tim's podcasts. If you don't do anything with that knowledge, you will not change. And if you're recognizing that change needs to be made, you're at least aware of something being wrong. Get out of your own way. Send the message. Tim, Zach, guys, I need some help. I don't know where to start. We will give you the information. You apply it. And guess what? That's the action. That's it. Just reach out and start doing things differently. Start living more intentionally. You know, Tim you've been putting out too many podcasts for guys to say, I've listened to them all and yet I haven't changed at all. You are doing the work. We're putting the ropes out. For anybody listening to this, you know, that would be my statement. It's time to put the reps in. And if you don't know where to start with your actions, reach out, please. I answer every single DM I get, every single one for free, you know, and so reach out. It will not hurt you to ask.
Zach, this has been an awesome conversation. I'm so glad we finally made this
happen. Brother.
You mentioned answering DMs. What's the best way for people to contact you, to find out more about you, the Family Alpha, FOE, all those things? I'll give you your chance to put your plug in here.
Yeah. So social media, it's Zac Small, ZACSMALL_. I'm most active on Twitter likely, but I mean, I'm on all the platforms. And then thefamilyalpha.com is where I write. You'll find links to other things there. And then fraternityofexcellence.com. That's the private brotherhood where Tim, myself, and many other men are out there getting after it, doing our thing, living our lives, and swapping notes.
Zac, thank you so much for coming. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
This has been an episode of the Into the Wilderness podcast. This is Timothy Regal. Thank you for listening. For additional content and to learn more about Into the Wilderness, visit www.intothewildernessblog.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and all other social media at Timothy Regal. TIMOTHYREIGLE. If you're like me and many other men, you've struggled with porn. I was addicted for over 15 years and thought I would never break free. But through accountability, hard work, and never giving up, I found freedom from porn and sex addiction. If you're fighting the same battle, know there is hope. You can defeat this, but you cannot do it alone. That's why I offer one-on-one coaching to walk beside you in your battle. I'll provide personal guidance, support, and encouragement, and most importantly, accountability to keep you on track and help you reach your goals. So if you're ready to finally quit porn for good, if you're ready to put in the hard work, and if you're ready to finally take control of your life back, click on the link in the show notes to go to www.intothewildernessblog.com or DM me on Twitter or other social media to get started in your path to freedom today.